And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
Good morning and welcome to The Law Show here on CIL 650. It's a pleasure to welcome back Joe Murphy and Derek Ma from the Vancouver personal injury firm MurphyBattista, LLP. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Sterling.
Good morning, Sterling.
Derek and Joe, good to have you with us on the program today. We're going to talk a lot about disability insurance, something that probably most of us carry, maybe through work, maybe through car policies, and very, very, very few of us, if any of us at all, actually understand this. But before we come to understanding disability insurance, or at least getting a handle on the file, we should know a little bit about Murphy-Battista. Joe Murphy, senior founding partner. You and Mr. Battista started back there in the early 80s on a very shoestring budget when a business loan cost a person 19% interest.
Yeah, Sterling, January 1982, we set up the firm. I remember the interest rates at 19%, and I remember businesses were closing, not opening.
Yes.
And we set up a firm. We rented 2 offices and 2 secretarial bays in an existing law office and began working on a very, very small scale. And we're now 15 lawyers, support staff of about 55, and we have just opened an Okanagan office in Kelowna. So things have grown over time.
But you and your partner, Joe Battista, and you've stated this in previous episodes, the plan was to keep it small.
Yes.
To try and just really keep this a small, tidy little shop that has a specific personal injury focus, full stop. And you've grown in spite of yourselves. And that's by reputation, I suspect, more than anything else.
Well, the reality is that the work just came in to us, and we had more and more work coming in, and we just needed more good lawyers to handle it. We couldn't handle it ourselves. So the growth over time was out of necessity. We never advertised in the Yellow Pages. You couldn't find us in the Yellow Pages when that was the way in which so many firms advertised.
Right, yeah.
We don't do late-night TV ads.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very simple philosophy that if we do a really good job for our clients, the business will come, and it has.
And as you've grown, one of the good lawyers you brought into the firm along the way was Derek Ma, who joined after working for one of those big defense firms downtown after law school. But Derek, you go back even before becoming a lawyer, you were a physiotherapist. You had a career, you had a life, you had a real job, and all of a sudden you jettisoned all that for the law. What on earth possessed you, man?
I never planned my life like that. It was something that I think fell into my lap. I'm fortunate that it happened. It was a good decision for me, and the rehab background has served me very well in this.
I would imagine so, especially with personal injury, because so much of that background in physiotherapy enters your daily practice.
Yeah, well, what's helpful is I understand the terms. I understand the medical terminology.
Right.
I don't have to go learn that part of it, and that's always been very helpful. What I've noticed, some people have said that really works well, I guess, if you're in trial, and I said it does sometimes. I've had to say that to a doctor. So I understand that this is the case in my time as working as a physiotherapist, and they sort of take them aback a little bit. Okay, we have to talk on even terms now.
Right. One thing that has come up in previous conversations, when it comes to personal injury law and law firms, Derek, you just mentioned going to court. And you smiled when you said going to court. You like going to court, and so does Joe Murphy, and so do all of your colleagues. It's a critical part, I think, in an individual selecting his or her law firm. It's important if you are in a situation whereby at some future date you may end up in a courtroom scenario, right from the get-go, to secure lawyers who have practical, successful courtroom experience, Derek.
It absolutely is. And it's not that difficult nowadays to find out who's gone to court and who hasn't. You can research the judgments online. But find out if your lawyer has gone to court, and if so, what's happened in those court judgments. Because insurance companies, as much as, they get thrown under the bus and they're talked about, belittled, whatever it may be, they know what they're doing. They know who they're dealing with.
Right.
And if they know that you're dealing with a firm who does go to trial, they're not going to try to shortchange you as much as if you're with a lawyer who's not gone to trial in 10 years.
So start from a position of strength, Joe Murphy. Start with a lawyer who isn't afraid of anybody.
It's essential, Sterling. The analogy I use is you're sort of hiring a gunslinger, and if you've got a gunslinger who never goes to court, the reality is he doesn't have any bullets.
Right, right.
So you don't know that, you the client, but the insurance company sure does.
Right.
So it's essential. Now, every lawyer who does this kind of work says, I do trial work. And the reality is some of them never go to court or almost never go to court.
Right.
And there's a real disadvantage to the client if that's the lawyer, because the insurance company knows that.
And Derek, you've worked for one of those monolithic big law corporations that defends big companies, big insurance providers and others, and they know who all the players are in the marketplace, and they know that if lawyer X is representing this client in this claim, that lawyer doesn't go to court. Come on.
No, that's absolutely true, and I can tell you from my experience with that, when we had a claim come in and was represented by MurphyBattista, we knew that was a good firm.
Right.
That was a firm that would run a trial if that's what was required for it. And you did know who were the firms that did not run trials.
Oh, yeah.
So it's there.
Right. Now, disability insurance is the subject matter for this episode of The Law Show, gentlemen. And Joe, is that, in terms of the sort of practice that you've done in these many years with MurphyBattista, is disability law, does that eat up more of your time than any of the other areas of personal injury law?
No, in terms of our office practice, it's probably 10% of the claims.
Okay.
The other reality is, Sterling, is the clients who come into us with disability insurance problems are the ones who have been either cut off or who have never received any payments. We don't see the people who get paid. We see the people who have not been paid.
Do most of us carry disability insurance of one form or another, in many cases not even being aware of that, Derek?
Many people do. If you're working in a hospital, for example, you're a nurse or a social worker, you'll have that as part of your group disability package or group benefits.
Okay.
For people who are in private practice or work in a job, which maybe they're on their own, self-employed, they'd have to purchase that on their own. But I would say most of us probably have that. If you're in a union setting, you absolutely, almost positive you'll have that.
Well, I'm just thinking of producer Dwayne Bishop and me here at working for this radio company, which is based in Nova Scotia, and it's a big firm. They got 90-some radio stations across Canada. We all have employee benefits, Joe. Is it likely that we would have that clause or two in our package?
Very likely, but of course the terms of each policy are different. What the benefits are that are paid are different. And it can range from benefits that are paid for a few months to benefits that potentially could be paid for the balance of a person's work life.
Is there
the amount involved, of course, varies.
Right.
Sometimes the client with the biggest policies I had was $35,000 a month. This was a young professional who had a very big and busy office and a big income. So the $35,000 a month wasn't going to pay all of her loss when she couldn't work. To, a few $100s a month, $800 for
So that person with the
person.
$35,000 a month policy went out and specifically purchased a disability insurance plan that would cover her circumstances. It was tailored to her unique circumstances.
She had two policies, one that was an office overhead policy and one a personal policy, but together they were $35,000 a month.
Okay. So when do disability claims get filed? You said only 10% of the claims or the cases that come to MurphyBattista are disability insurance oriented. So that would suggest that 90% of disability claims are handled, processed?
I have no idea. It could be 95%. People are content with the benefits they get paid, and the ones we see are the 5% that aren't. 10% of our overall business, our practice, is these claims. But
Right.
I don't know whether they're 1% or 5% of the total disability claims.
Fair enough. But I suppose what I'm after here, Derek, in a very roundabout, awkward fashion, as usual, is just trying to find out when people make a claim against their disability insurance policy, what's the success rate minus lawyers in the picture? How about if I phrase it that way?
Sure. I think Joe's probably put that percentage somewhere. I would imagine it's probably 90, 95%. I think most of the time people are getting their disability benefits. One thing they have to be aware about is what the policy says, because there is a certain amount of time when they have to apply for those benefits.
Okay, so there's a statute of limitations again with respect to disability insurance?
The statute of limitations when you can sue the insurance company if they don't pay you your disability benefits, but within the policy, it'll set out how much time you have to apply for the benefits once you've been injured or once a disability has come on. Because it's not always an injury that causes a disability. It could be a natural cause. Your knee's degenerative.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right.
Age.
Age.
All of those boomer realities.
Yeah.
Mr. Murphy, the boomer, and yours truly, the other boomer in this room, rolling our eyes. Some of these age things just are, well, they're just uncomfortable, but you can't avoid them. But, Joe, I suppose what I'm after here in terms of trying to understand disability insurance is are the people who insure us against these risks, are they, generally speaking, fair in terms of their awards when we make claims, having paid the premiums?
Sterling, my experience, and again, the people I see are the ones who come in my door who were not paid, either were never paid, or were paid for a while and then cut off.
Okay.
And when I look at those people, the ones that walk in the door, I am shocked sometimes, often, at how the insurance companies treated them, because these people have been told by the insurance company, you need your doctor to write a report saying you can't work, so they get that report.
Right.
And then they say, well, the report really doesn't confirm that you're unable to work, and you read it and you think, I think it does. So then they'll go out and see another doctor and get another report, and it says they can't work. And the insurance company says, well, this just isn't enough. And then sometimes insurance companies will hire a doctor to examine them, and they get a report from the doctor that either says or strongly suggests they can't work, and they still don't pay. So in my experience, again, with these people that walk in the door, I think the insurance companies work very hard at not paying people.
Right.
That oftentimes, or usually it's not done fairly. My sense is that the insurance companies in these cases that walk in my door are out to not pay, and they just want to beat this person down. Often insurance companies say, we've refused your claim, but you can appeal.
Right.
So a person goes out and gets all new reports and that, and they send it in. And oftentimes the appeal's decided by the same people, or essentially the same people that denied the claim
in the first place. Right.
And then they say, well, we've denied your appeal, but you can appeal a second time. And these people go to all this time and trouble. They provide all the materials. Again, it's essentially the same group making the decision on the second appeal, and they deny the claim. And I think those are designed, or they have the effect of just discouraging people, where they finally throw up their hands and say, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. Even though these people sometimes are destitute, this is money they needed to pay their living expenses. They didn't have a lot of money in the bank. And they just get ground down, and on their own they think, well, there's no hope here. I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah. Sterling, on that point, my experience has been it's not really the amount that's in dispute, because that's usually settled in the policy of how much you're going to get per month.
Right.
It's whether you've met that definition of what the insurance company says is disability to qualify for the payment of the benefits.
Right.
So that's usually the argument that's going on. It's not the amount. I mean, there have been mistakes in calculations, and you can clarify that with the insurance company, and they usually agree to it if it has been a mistake.
Right.
But it's usually that entitlement that is where people come in to see us.
So the dissatisfaction isn't necessarily with the money involved, because the money, you knew what the money would be because it's your policy. You knew what the maximum payout could be.
It's settled in the policy.
It's the fact that the dissatisfaction comes from the fact that there's no payout.
Correct. Even
though the funds may be limited, there are no funds forthcoming.
Yeah. For example, a policy may say if you're disabled, you get 75% of your wages that you enjoyed prior to the disability.
Sounds pretty typical.
Yeah. So what is that amount? We can calculate
that.
Get your
do the math.
That's the easy part. The bigger challenge is, and these policies are written, if you're totally disabled, that's the phrase used,
right,
then you get benefits. And doctors are often asked, well, gee, is Mary Smith totally disabled? Well, a doctor doesn't understand what totally disabled means as it's set out in the policy, because that phrase, totally disabled, you think, well, someone's bedbound and they can't do anything. And that's not what it means in the insurance policy. It means you can't do your job.
Oh, okay.
You can't do all the important parts of your job. So the doctor's at a real disadvantage, even though they want to help the patient,
Right.
because they'll say, well, gee, are you totally disabled?
Mm-hmm.
And rarely would people think, looking at someone who can get up and walk and talk and dress themselves and go out and do their shopping, well, you're not totally disabled.
Right.
So doctors, but if a doctor says, yes, they're totally disabled, the insurance company says, and when will the total disability end? And the doctor thinks, well, I've got to give an answer to that. This is usually a fill in the box
Right, sure.
situation. So they'll say 3 months. Well, at that point, 3 months is written in stone.
Becomes
and
binding, eh? Yeah.
Come 3 months, this person's going to be cut off, even if the doctor says, well, no, they're still unable to work. It's too late. So there's all these pitfalls. There's this language, total disability, that both the claimants, the people making the claims, and their treating people don't understand what in the context of the policy that means.
And it sounds, Derek, that some of these questions, we need to take a break, but I can't just let go of this one. It sounds like some of these questions that the doctors are faced with are almost deliberately ambiguous.
They can be. They absolutely can be, because they're not, the definition of total disability isn't provided to a doctor.
Right.
So what does it mean? And depending on where you are in the policy or the time since the disabilities occurred, we'll talk about that, I guess, in more detail later
Definitely,
on.
yeah.
But there's a distinguishment between any occupation and your own occupation. So the first 2 years after a disability, you usually have to prove that you're disabled from your own occupation.
Right.
And after that, most policies change off to any occupation.
After 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. We need to take a quick break here. Our guests, Joe Murphy and Derek Maw from Murphy-Battista LLP online. Take a moment and check them out while we take a quick commercial break. It's MurphyBattista.com, and Battista is spelled Battista. MurphyBattista.com. We're talking disability insurance on today's episode of The Law Show. Do you have some? How effective do you think it really will be in your life if you actually really need it? Stick with us. We'll talk more after this.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.